Hi, my name is Dr. Mario Wallace, and welcome to the lecture on leading diverse teams. As we navigate through the landscape where diversity, equity, and inclusion are being rolled back, and the Black History celebrations are being undermined, and the weaponization of DEI in political discourse have led to some of the changes in how we approach work and community today. Inclusive leadership has never been so critical. In this session, I will explore Black organizational development, psychological safety, and agile nudge strategies to sustain a world of diversity, equity, and inclusion in this era of resistance. So, this session is about leading diverse teams in the era of resistance. My name is Dr. Mario Wallace, the founder of All Things Strategic. I have more than 20 years of small business consulting, as well as 11 years of healthcare consulting. My background is strategy management, strategy execution. I've written and published academic articles on the topic of strategy management, as well as written books and programs to help minority and diverse leaders be more effective and strategic in their approach to organizations and communities. I've also written a recent book on unearthing the legacy of African American history, uh, highlighting the small towns that African Americans established in the late 1800s during the era of post-Reconstruction and Jim Crow. I have a bachelor's degree in international language, that is Spanish, in rhetoric and writing, a master's degree in learning system technology, which is online education development, as well as a doctorate degree in business administration leadership, certified in the Balanced Scorecard, Lean Six Sigma Black Belt, change management, emotion intelligence, communications, and so forth. Uh, I've worked as a principal consulting strategy officer at the Ohio State University Wexner Medical Center, and I currently work as a business advisor for Goldman Sachs and a professor at University of Central Arkansas. First thing I want to talk about is a program that I developed for Black business professionals. So the program is a 6 month program that consists of understand the principles of strategic impact, how to lead an organization as an executive or a director level leader, and understanding the dynamics of organizational impact, right? Strategic planning, change management, all the things that impacts how to advance an organization, and studying the competitors and having a clear understanding of corporate financials, as well as exploring theories related to strategic impact, that's new theories that or concepts published within the last 5 years, and how to gauge that research to understand how to lead an organization, how to apply the principles from some of the theories and some of the experiences and case studies that you will be studying, as well as how and eventually becoming a strategic impact Black professional. So the learning objectives today are explore the foundation of psychological safety, Black organizational development, and Agile Nudge, recognize the advantages of leading a diverse team, including enhanced creativity, innovation, and problem-solving capabilities in the workplace, learning actionable strategies to utilize team diversity to drive collaboration, and explaining how to develop and implement nudges or choice architects. So the first thing I want to say is a quote by Ola Joseph, who says, diversity is not about how we differ. Diversity is about embracing one's uniqueness. This is something that we really have to understand, that America is a diverse country, unlike many countries that exist today. And within this collage of diversity, the uniqueness that comes out with the products that we develop, that creates our GDP and the work that we do, the innovation that grows from research initiatives and research projects, and just the innovation from collaboration within an organization, different departments, and across different units and businesses across the country. We are a thriving, innovative, dynamic country with the basis of diversity. So, what is diversity? Diversity encompasses differences in race, gender, age, religion, culture, education, ability, and life experiences. The importance of diversity in leadership. Diverse teams bring unique perspectives, foster innovation and adaptability in today's competitive workforce. Key developments in diversity over time. From the 1960s to 2020 and beyond. The first thing in the 60s, diversity as representation. The key drivers were the civil rights and anti-discrimination laws. And this was between the civil rights movement and other Black leaders and professionals during that particular era, as well as the president, JFK, and Lyndon B. Johnson. And between the individuals who came together to have these conversations, one thing that was achieved, or multiple things that were achieved, is the Civil Rights Bill and anti-discrimination laws, as well as the executive order signed by Lyndon B. Johnson, basically that ended Jim Crow South in America and started the liberation and the freedom and the rights that African Americans and minorities should have had a long time ago, but they began to gain those at their particular time. The 60s, affirmative action and legal compliance, key driver, equal employment opportunities within the workforce, where minorities were not just janitors and service-oriented people at the frontline level. At this particular time, minorities began to be transitioning to supervisory and management roles in organization, and eventually today to CEOs of large companies. The 1920s to 2000s, cultural competence and inclusion. This was more of a globalization and multicultural impact across the globe. In 2010, intersectionality and systemic equality. And this was due to the social justice movement, such as the Black Lives Matter movement and the Me Too movement. And 2020 and beyond led to inclusive excellence and belonging, and DEI integration into strategy, sustainability, and innovation. And as we talk about DEI integrations, we have to really highlight, what does DEI actually mean? So if we break the words up into diversity, equity, inclusion, diversity is a concept of representation and differences. Examples are demographics and hiring, enrollment, and participation. Equity, fairness, fair access by addressing systemic barriers such as pay equity audits, accessibility, and infrastructure. Inclusion, creating a culture of belonging where people feel accepted within a culture, where people feel and don't fear retaliation based on mistakes they've made. They can actually grow in the culture and feel a sense of belonging with everyone else within that culture. Examples: inclusive leadership training, employee resource groups, and so forth. And lastly, inclusive excellence, embedding DEI into institutional frameworks. Examples are university diversity plans and corporate DEI benchmarks. Within the next 3 slides, I will share with you successful examples of diverse teams and why diversity matter in America. So we think about NASA's Apollo 11 mission that consisted of diverse scientists, engineers, mathematicians, including Katherine Johnson, who played key roles. Collaboration across gender and racial lines achieved in groundbreaking mission. So if we talk about Neil Armstrong, the actual first person or astronaut to walk on the moon, the things that he did and what he accomplished, and how that set the stage of America first across all other countries that was a part of the space race. But we cannot talk about Neil Armstrong and we cannot talk about the Apollo 11 mission without talking about and highlighting Katherine Johnson, who was a Black mathematician who played a key role in calculating the trajectory of Apollo 11 to the actual moon. Um, Without her being a part of this amazing, diverse team, uh, would it have been possible for Neil Armstrong and his a team of astronauts to actually land on the moon? So diversity has its place, and diversity we cannot downplay diversity by grouping it within a specific ethnicity or race of people who are seeking to be inclusive and have a more equitable footprint in the larger scheme of America. But we have to look at it in its broad application of bringing uh, gender diverse ideas, race into a specific challenge or a specific situation where we land on the best ideas and the best outcomes. Then we think of the Manhattan Project, which was a group of scientists from various nations and disciplines that came together and developed the atomic energy or the atomic bomb. Although the leader of this particular initiative was Robert, Oppenheimer, and there is a nice movie today that you can actually, the Manhattan Project that exists, that's on Netflix or Amazon Prime, and I suggest that you watch the movie um, about the entire process and the project as it relates to how this came together. But not only was there a group of scientists in disciplines that participated in the development of this particular atomic energy or atomic bond, but there were Black workers and Hispanic workers that were crucial in refining uranium plants and in cities like Oak Ridge and states like in Tennessee that participated in the structural development, the building of the location, the structural development, and the resources needed to be gathered to create this actual atomic energy. The last example is the civil rights movement. And when we think of the civil rights movement, we have to think of not only Martin Luther King Jr., but Daisy Bates, Thurgood Marshall, Mayor Evers, Coretta Scott King, Betty Shabazz, Malcolm X, the Nation of Islam, Elijah Muhammad, Farrakhan. I mean, you have to, Stokely Carmichael with the Black Panthers, Angela Davis, H. Rap Brown, and the names continue to grow when we think of the civil rights movement. But we also have to think about it wasn't a movement of only African Americans. It was a movement of Hispanics. It was a movement of whites. It was a movement of Jews. So all of them came together and they fought for civil rights because they believed in equality for all. Although the primary focus was African Americans gaining some type of equality, it was an overall effort of people from all different walks of life and all different races in America that helped to achieve and change the behavior and mindset of the majority race in America. So the theoretical foundation of this particular session are three. One is Black organizational development, psychological safety, and Agile Nudge. As it relates to Black organizational development, this was a concept developed by Ella Edmondson Bell, an African-American woman who conducted research to understand what are the factors that lead to what are the factors and the barriers of diversity in the workplace for African Americans. So she examined how race, gender, and other identity markers influence Black professionals' experiences in the workplace. She also identified policy practices and systems that create inequalities for Black employees. And her concept and her model was designed to remove some of the barriers to help African Americans to give them an equal platform to be more effective in the workplace. Psychological safety by uh, Amy Edmondson is a concept of creating an environment where individuals feel safe to express ideas and take risks without fear or embarrassment or punishment. Both of these are more cultural driven theoretical foundation, basically uh, changing the culture environment in order for minorities to have an equal footing in the workplace. Um, Psychological safety looks more at how to manage the people and how to effectively uh, deliver solutions to the people based on different groups of people within an organization. And I'll explain that once we get to the actual model. And then we have the Agile Nudge, which was introduced by Malaz Bustani. Agile Nudge is a behavioral economic approach to applying choice architecture uh, to guide decision making using nudge strategies while preserving individual autonomy. Now, this is a unique one, and this will be more at the end of the session where I will show you how to use his approach to nudge application um, to suggest different ideas and different strategies within the workplace without taking away a person's choice. So Dr. Ella Edmondson Bell, her work on Black organization development focused on addressing systemic and structural barriers faced by Black professionals within organization. While her contributions aren't formalized into distinct quadrants like other frameworks, her work is deeply rooted in the themes of identity, systemic biases, professional advancement, and organizational culture. Now, to extend what she did, I actually took her emerging things from her research and created uh, a framework to explain her approach. So this is a framework that I took the liberty to develop to explain the four identified themes that came out of our research and how they relate to each other and how we can use them to advance, to learn or to study Black organizational development in the workplace. So the first two are organizational culture and climate and identity and intersectionality. So the first is organizational culture and climate, which focuses on workplace environment's role in shaping Black employees' sense of belonging and well-being, and identity and intersectionality, which focuses on the unique challenges faced by Black professionals due to intersection of race, gender, and other identity markers. Together, these two define the concept of inclusion. Then we have structural and institutional barriers, which focuses on systemic inequalities, organizational policies, practices, and opportunities. These two together at the bottom in identity and intersectionality and structural and institutional barriers focuses more on or define disparities in organization. And then we have leadership, representation, and advocacy, which focuses on increasing Black representation in leadership roles and decision making. Together, these two define and focuses on inequalities, and then the top two define and focus on representation. So basically, her model looks at inclusion, disparities, inequalities, and representation. The close proximity of the quadrants explain what the quadrants closer to each other, how together they collectively address a specific thing, but individually, they also address individual uh, factors that can help remove barriers within an organization. You start at the bottom right, which is structural and institutional barriers, systemic inequalities in organizational policies, practices, and opportunities. Start to build out those particulars first to build the foundation within an organization. Then you shift to the left of identity and intersectionality. Focus on those challenges faced by Black professionals as it relates to race, gender, and other identity markers. Then you go to the top left, organizational culture and climate. Uh, Build out a sense of belonging, a culture that African Americans and Black Americans can thrive in. And lastly, leadership representation, right? Start to increase the role of leadership, Black leadership in key decision-making positions. So this is a continuation of the Black Organizational Development Framework. And I want to highlight why I am addressing this today, particularly in the era of resistance. We know that today, since DEI initiatives and the concept of DEI is being weaponized in political discourse, these particular terms and these particular approaches cannot be apparent in the workplace because they may lead to retaliation if you're trying to execute the concept of DEI. So what I'm doing here is just giving you the foundation of what it is, the research that was developed that showed how to remove the barriers for minority people, specifically African Americans, but just giving you the structure and the foundation of what it looks like. So once we get beyond this resistance in this particular administration, it could lead to prosperity in the future where we can actually regroup and start to build out on constructs and frameworks like this to make the workplace a better place to be more effective and more inclusive for all. Again, the model addresses the inequalities which refer to systemic imbalances and unfairness within organizational structures, policies, and practices for Black professionals. Refer inclusion, which refers to creating a workplace environment where Black employees feel valued, respected, and fully integrated into an organizational culture. Disparities, which are observable differences in outcomes, opportunities, and access to resources between Black professionals and their peers in the workplace. And representation refers to the presence and visibility of Black professionals, particularly in leadership and decision-making roles within organizations. So here is an extension of Dr. Bell's work and research that focus on challenges faced by Black professionals in corporate America. And as it relates to her theoretical framework, you can actually read this particular book or listen to the audio book to learn more about what it looks like through the lens of diversity in gender, diversity in race, diversity in education, and particularly by Black and white women. This is a great book to read, entitled Our Separate Ways. So now we shift from Dr. Ella Edmondson Bell to Dr. Amy Edmondson, who is the founder of Psychological Safety. She is quoted saying, "Psychological safety and courage are simply two sides of the same coin. Both are and will continue to be needed in a complex and uncertain world." So Dr. Amy Edmondson created the 4 quadrants of psychological safety. And here are the descriptions of each zone. The first zone is teams. It's apathy zone, which teams in anxiety zones may achieve short-term results, but struggle to sustain or sustainability and innovation, which is a lack of leadership and lack of guidance. Then you have the comfort zone, which teams in the comfort zone are cohesive, but struggle to meet goals or adapt to challenges. This is, again, a lack of leadership, leading the people through to help them to understand that They have to have a sense of accountability. Although they have comfort where they can speak out freely without retribution or retaliation, they still need to meet certain deadlines, obligations for an organization to be more effective. You have apathy zone where teams are dysfunctional with minimal collaboration and progress, which is the lowest of all four zones. And you have the learning zone. Teams in the learning zone thrive and achieve both strong performances and personal development. This is the ideal zone to get people in to be more effective in a psychologically safe environment, meaning that this particular zone have elements of the anxiety zone and comfort zone. The elements of the anxiety zone is team achieves short-term results effectively. And the element of the comfort zone is the team is comfortable with speaking out with certain challenges. Those two elements are two of the core elements that make up the learning zone. The model in which Dr. Amy Edmondson created as a visual looks at four quadrants, and the quadrants are anxiety zone, apathy zone, comfort zone, and learning zone. And then you have at the bottom, you have accountability, which is measured from low to high. And to the left, which is more vertical, you have psychological safety, which is measured from low to high. So the bottom left, you have more low accountability and low psychological safety. The bottom right, you have high accountability and low psychological safety. As we make it to the top, we have the comfort zone, we have high psychological safety, but low accountability. And to the top right, we have high accountability and high psychological safety. This is the zone to thrive in to ensure a psychologically safe climate where people can thrive, people can achieve goals, people are confident and don't have a sense of fear if they make a mistake in the work that they're doing. Teams collaborate effectively across business units, departments, even across organizations. So this is where we are today. The Trump administration has taken steps to dismantle diversity, equity, and inclusion initiatives within the federal government, arguing that these programs constitute illegal discrimination. An executive order was issued to terminate DEI policies, asserting that they promote race or sex-based preferences, which the administration deems discriminatory. Consequently, federal officials overseeing DEI efforts have been placed on paid leave with plans for eventual termination. The reason why I talked about Dr. Ella Edmondson Bell's Black Organization Development Model was to educate you that there is a foundation, and that in her research, she found evidence that diversity, equity, inclusion is a must in the workplace to ensure collaboration, innovation, and safe environments for all people, and to ensure equality, equity exists, and inclusion within the workplace. Now, this theoretical framework is deemed today as discriminatory. So you cannot go into an organization today using that concept to make a position. And if you do, you may be retaliated against. So I was giving you that so you can understand that it is the foundation, it exists, and you should understand it and know the history and know how to use it effectively when the time comes. As it relates to Dr. Amy Edmondson's psychologically safe theoretical concept, I share that with you to give you a sense of what it is and how can you create a psychologically safe environment. Basically, if you look at a pyramid and you start from the first tier, the second tier, and the third tier, the bottom tier, you have the majority minority. As you go up to the second tier of the pyramid, you have minorities, a high concentration of minorities, but not as many as you have at the bottom tier. And when you get to the executive leadership position, since 1965 to 2025, and only a 6% improvement in executive leadership position for minority professionals in the workplace. So given that, we have to create a sense of psychological safety. We're not using terms of diversity, equity, inclusion, or DEI, but we still have to know how to foster psychologically safe environments in this age of resistance. So I gave you the concept, the term, the definitions, and how to use psychological safety to foster teams, which lead to high performance. So today, DEI has been weaponized. And similar to someone spray painting a derogatory term against Black people or white people on houses, it's the same as the feeling, the sentiment is the same from this current administration. It's the same as painting DEI on a house, which the response of that will be very negative and considered discrimination according to the policies that are being placed by this current administration. So what is discrimination? Discrimination refers to the unjust or prejudicial treatment of individuals based on characteristics such as race, gender, age, sexual orientation, or disability, rather than their individual merit. This can manifest in various forms, including biased attitudes or practices that lead to unequal opportunities and outcomes. Such actions often result in harm or disadvantage to targeted persons or groups. Today, under this particular administration, DEI falls within this particular category. It's seen or deemed as discriminatory. So we have to find a different approach and different strategies and different tactics to sustain an effective work environment without using the concepts in the language and the terminologies of diversity, equity, and inclusion. We have to find a better way to fight in order to sustain what we have, because we know that a more diverse world creates more opportunities for success in research, science, development, and business ideas and products. So there are two approaches that we have to consider. One is a top-down authoritarian approach, and the other is a nudge. A top-down authoritarian approach is described as imposing rules, mandates, and policies from higher authorities, such as the current administration. Leaves little to no room for individual choice or flexibility, creates resistance just by the changing in new policy changes push down on people or the populace, and relies on control and enforcement, often using penalties or rigid standards to ensure compliance. Does that sound familiar to you? So what we need to do as advocates for diversity, we need to shift our mindset from more of an authoritarian-based leadership to more of a nudge-based leadership with different strategies and tactics. So what does that look like? We need to subtly influence behavior by designing environments that guide people toward desirable outcomes. Encourage voluntary action without restricting freedom of choice, and rely on psychological principles such as default options and positive framing rather than coercion. So what's a nudge? A nudge is architecting the social, physical, and digital environment to facilitate certain behaviors without forbidding choice. Nudges can live in three different environments. A social environment where people interact and engage with each other. The physical environment consists of buildings, apparatuses, equipment, just different physical and tangible objects within an environment that can be moved around based on some unique type of nudge strategy that can uh, persuade people to do things differently based on how the environment is structured. And the digital environment in which you can build a choice architect or a nudge in a digital environment that uh, persuade people to use that environment a certain way to accomplish the desired outcomes for that particular organization due to this particular nudge. So this is an example of a nudge. Remember that a nudge is a choice architect that is designed that does not take away a person's choice in the matter. So it's not a top-down authoritarian process or order or mandate. It's a subtle shift in the environment that leads to or try to persuade a certain outcome of those who exist in that particular environment. So to the left, you see different cakes and different pastries up front, and you see the fruit in the back. So a choice architect or strategy could, if we are trying to promote healthy options and healthy outcomes within our environment, we can shift and move the actual fruits from the back to the front, meaning as people enter in from left to right, the first thing they see are the fruits before they see the pastries. And as we move across, we see healthy, different drinking options, and we also see apples to the right. So this is a nudge in a physical environment where different things have been moved around to influence choice without taking away choice in this particular environment, which is trying to highlight a more healthier food option for people within the work environment. This is also a nudge, and this is in the physical environment as well, but it can also be in a digital environment, such as different software programs based on how they are color coded to attempt to influence choice without taking away choice, right? So if you walk into a building, you see four doors and one yellow door out of the four doors, and the yellow door is open somewhat, which creates and piques your curiosity. The goal is to call attention to something within this digital or within this physical environment that persuade you towards the actual yellow door. So what are nudge strategies? So in order to really create nudge, you have to understand the concept of a sprint. How do you build out a nudge or a choice architect in an environment to get people to behave a certain way? So one thing is a sprint approach is test one or two nudges at a time with a pilot group or a department. Measure the effectiveness using metrics like employee engagement, retention, and survey feedback. Iterate based on results and expand successful strategies across an organization. So basically, if you test a nudge and it works, replicate it and expand it across the organization. Keep messaging focus on business benefits to avoid suspicion or resistance. So this is a strategy that we're using in a resistant time where DEI initiatives and principles are have been rolled back. And the terminology, and the concepts that center in the programs that centers around diversity, equity, inclusion are looked at or deemed discriminatory by the current administration. So there's certain languages that we can't use. There's certain terms that we can't use, but we can foster a psychologically safe environment using nudge strategies to accomplish the things that we would like to ensure and sustain our diverse environments. So here's an 8-step process designed by Dr. Malaz Bustani, um, that shows the steps in which we use and that we can use to create nudges. So the first step is to evaluate the opportunity for a nudge. To evaluate the opportunity for a nudge is to look within your organization, look at your leadership team, look at your policies, look at your programs. And if there are no program that supports a diverse environment, then there's an opportunity for you to develop a nudge. Search for evidence-based nudges or develop them. Uh, do some research and see what other people are doing in other organizations as it relates to nudge opportunities. And if you see some that you can use, you take it and you localize it for your organization in your project for implementation in your organization. Before you just develop a nudge, please search and see if any exists in the market through academic research, or just search the internet in particular. Develop evaluation termination plans for nudges. Make sure before you build out your nudge, make sure you determine when you will terminate it. If it's not working within 30, 60, 90 days, then by all means terminate that nudge and look for something else that may can work. But you develop your metrics and you determine if it's working based on the metrics that you've structured. Once you identify that nudge or develop a nudge, localize it for a business unit, a division, or etc., on how you plan to implement it, and identify the people who will work with you to push the nudge forward. Implement the nudge in sprints, right? Iterative, learn. Once you implement it, learn from it and adjust accordingly. Monitor the impact of that nudge on the business unit and the overall organization. Develop a nudge SOP, standard operating procedure, and based on success of the nudge, then replicate the nudge across areas within your organization using an agile diffusion strategy method. To learn more about the agile diffusion strategy method, please refer to my Rethinking Change lecture, which is on YouTube under All Things Strategic. This is a model you can use to develop, implement, and replicate your nudge strategies. So what is a nudge strategy? So this could be a nudge strategy, right? Standardize interview questions for all candidates and use structured scoring rubrics to minimize biases. You can actually develop the actual nudge. This is the actual nudge. You can have a group of people that study the data based on the termination plan that you've created within your nudge. And you can actually run that particular nudge for several months to see if you are getting the ideal candidates that creates that diverse opportunity within the organization. For reasoning, this promotes fairness and ensures decisions are based on merit while appearing as a productivity enhancing hiring practice. Another nudge could be rotating individuals who review resumes or participate in promotion panels to ensure a broader range of perspectives. So don't have the same people who are not diverse to review resumes. Always rotate those people to ensure fairness and equity and inclusion as it relates to the interview or review process, resume review process that leads to interviews and leads to potential candidates. The reasoning, a diverse set of decision makers reduce bias and creates more equitable outcomes without overtly promoting diversity. Remember now, when you set up these structures, you have to have a termination plan and you have to have metrics, and you run the actual sprints for your timeline, a month, 2 months, and based on those outcomes, you know to write it up as a SOP and to replicate it across an organization without using any terms related to diversity, equity, inclusion. Assign cross-departmental teams for important projects, mixing individuals from different backgrounds and sets. So you set up these teams with the intent to naturally emerge without explicitly targeting specific groups, encouraging collaboration and networking, improving cross-functional synergy for better project outcomes. So again, you set up your termination plan, you implement your sprint based on the metrics, you determine the timeline in which you want to run this particular project to see if it works. Does it increase collaboration? And if it does, write it as a standard operating procedure and replicate it. And lastly, set up anonymous feedback channels to allow employees to voice concern or suggestions about workplace dynamics. This will give you more of a signaling opportunity to learn from the culture based on the things that you all are doing. But again, you set it up, you create a termination plan, you create a timeline as it relates to that termination plan, and you create metrics. And you learn through the metrics if it's working or not. And if it's not working, you terminate it and you identify another nudge. The reasoning, this can surface issues related to inclusion without directly asking for DEI feedback, how to frame it, improving organizational transparency and innovation through employee input. The next 4 or 5 slides are templates from Dr. Mlas Bustani's Agile Nudge Academy to build out your actual nudge opportunities. So this is, what's the goal of the nudge? What's the evidence base for the nudge? This one is description of evaluation. How do you plan to evaluate the nudge? This one is how do you plan to kill the nudge if it's not working within your timeline? How to design a sprint. What is the task that you want to run? Does the task require one member or multiple members of a team? How many hours should you run this sprint? What is the actual length of the sprint? What's the start date, end date? And what are the goals and results you plan to gain from that sprint? What are the benefits of leading a diverse team? Innovation, diverse perspectives, enhance problem solving, creativity, better decision making. Teams with varied viewpoints consider multiple angles, leading to more informed decisions. Employee engagement, inclusive environments improve job satisfaction and retention. Market growth, diverse team better understand and cater to a broad customer base. Market growth, diverse teams better understand and cater to a broad customer base and reputation. Companies known for diversity attract top talent and improve image. Adaptability, diverse team helps to adjust to change and unexpected challenges. Cultural competence, members bring insights into different cultural norms and expectations. Collaboration, inclusive practices, foster teamwork and mutual respect. And competitive edge, diverse team outperform homogeneous ones in complex tasks and innovation. Takeaways, leading diverse team requires fostering inclusion and psychological safety. The benefits includes innovation, better decision-making, and enhanced employee engagement. Successful nudge strategies involve clandestine approaches to foster desired outcomes. Call to action, how can you reflect on how can you apply these principles in your current role? Engagement, start building an inclusive environment today without using terms and concepts like diversity, equity, inclusion, DEI, and so forth. Commitment, commit to fostering psychological safety and leveraging diversity to drive performance. Thank you.